Mint is a refreshing herb that comes in multiple varieties. Regardless of the variety that is growing, however, one thing is in common with all of them, and they are known as quite an invasive plant. You will often hear warnings about being careful how you plant it and where you plant it, because it can take over completely and choke out everything else. So I decided to run some tests and see just how invasive this plant is, because it does have a reputation, coming down to the point where some people will jokingly say, I once thought of mint and it started to grow there. So just how tough is this plant, and just how invasive is it? What will it actually grow back from? You'll be surprised by the results. So a while back I started with some ginger mint. It was a version of mint that I actually didn't even realise existed until I bought it. So what I did was I broke it up into multiple portions and tried different things with it. So this one here has been sitting in some water, very, very neglected other than topping the water up for, well, a fair bit of time. Now I know that once I plant this into some ground, this will burst out and grow really well. However, you can see here, all of these parts growing back, all these leaves, all of that was underneath the water until a few moments ago when I pulled it out to video this. So that is the extent to which it is actually trying to grow back in the water. This is just the offshoots that were left over after my experiment was completed, just to see what would happen with that. Now, to give you a better idea of my experiments, other than this one, the thicker parts of the roots was what I actually acted on. So, like an absolute monster and a barbarian, I chopped those up. So each thick part of a root that I came across, that had some small fibrous little bits of roots coming off them, I chopped up. The pieces were all tiny. So each piece that I actually chopped off would have been smaller than that. So if I chopped it up, just somewhere around that sort of size there. Tiny, 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 tiny bits. So basically what you'd expect to have if you threw it into a blender. So to give you an idea with that, what I was trying to do was each portion of the root that actually had some fibrous root coming off it, at that point that I thought, okay, there's a small chance, because there's actually some kind of nutrient grabbing portion of the root left, that maybe it just might be able to survive. So I just wanted to see what would happen with that. Each piece was probably about 2 millimeters long in length, just to give you an idea of just how tiny it was. I thought, almost no chance. It's the sort of thing that you would have thrown back into a garden, would have gone into your mulch or whatever, you would never have thought a second thought about it. I then planted each piece. I had approximately 8 of them that I planted in separate pots. Put them into a seedling mix and basically forgot about them. I didn't want to give them too much care because I was really trying to test hard. How well can this thing survive? However, I wasn't ridiculous about it, because if it dries out too much, realistically nothing is going to survive. So I made sure I threw water on there occasionally as well. I didn't allow it to dry out completely. If it was starting to sort of get any signs that that seedling mix was starting to dry out too much, it got some water. Sometimes I watered it more regularly, sometimes I watered it less regularly. Bet you can't guess how many of these actually managed to survive and grow back from something that you would pretty well guarantee that no plant on Earth can possibly ever grow back from this. So, there you have it. That's it growing back. Not only is it growing back, but it's growing back 2 plants. That's from that tiny little bit. All 8 grew back. So once again, being a barbarian, in the name of science, that's that very same one dug back out again. Now, To be fair, this is not a very short period of time either. This is over a month and a half, maybe 2. So it took time. And to give you an idea, as an example from there, the original, all those little fibrous bits, where I would have started from would have been basically that little corner bit, effectively, the equivalent to that, if you've taken off that. Or just these little fibrous bits on the very end here, would have snipped a bit of that off and grown that out. So that is how well mint can grow back. So there you have it. Mint will grow back from almost anything, will bounce back from almost anything. If you want to grow mint, grow it in a contained area. Another little trick that you may or may not be aware of is that if you have a smaller pot and it decides it doesn't have enough space, it'll start growing out the bottom of that pot. So be careful in raised garden beds as well, because it may decide to go down lower and work its way out of there. So unless you've got a very nicely well contained area, or don't really care about it taking over, keep it in a pot and keep it somewhere that it's not going to go beyond where you can keep control. This is a plant that will very happily grow and take over on just about anything. If you're finished with your mint and you decide to repot it or change the pot or throw it away or whatever, make absolutely certain that you do not reuse that soil in a non-contained area, because the tiny little bits of roots that you leave behind may very well regrow into more mint. So rather than actually repurposing and reusing that soil as you're thinking for something new, you may actually just be giving a whole new lease of life to a brand new mint plant to take over for you. So be careful with the mint. Another little trick, if you really want to grow it as well though, it likes a lot of moisture. So it is one of the plants that is actually quite happy getting quite a bit of wet. Also, peppermint is also the best one for getting rid of mosquitoes and keeping them away. Lots and lots of little uses out there. Have fun growing your mint, and if you have a black thumb and kill everything you try to grow, grow some mint, because it'll probably survive. Keep on growing.